For lunch or late night, the cheesy goodness of a quesadilla hits the spot. Amigos invites you to try the bold, fresh flavors of our new Southwest quesadillas. We start with a zesty salsa tortilla that's stuffed with pepper jack and cheddar cheese. Then we add your choice of marinated steak, grilled chicken, or Southwest chicken. The secret ingredient that makes it better than any other quesadilla? Amigos Ranch. As a snack or a meal, grab the new Southwest quesadilla at Amigos.
Ever tried reading while jogging, cooking, or even juggling flaming torches? Yeah, it doesn't end well. But with audiobooks.com, you can conquer books without the circus act. Dive into over 450,000 titles, including more than 10,000 free ones. Get hooked on a bestseller, find your next obsession, or finally read that classic you've been avoiding since high school. And here's the inside scoop. Sign up today for a free 30-day trial and snag your first 3 audiobooks on the house. Sign up for your free trial at audiobooks.com/podcastfree today. That's audiobooks.com/podcastfree.
The Agile Brand.
Welcome to Season 6 of the Agile Brand, where we discuss marketing technology and customer experience trends, insights, and ideas with enterprise and technology platform leaders. We focus on the people, processes, data, and platforms that make brands successful, scalable, customer-focused, and sustainable. This is what makes an Agile brand. I'm your host, Greg Kihlstrom, advising Fortune 1000 brands on MarTech, marketing operations, and CX, best-selling author and speaker. The Agile Brand Podcast is brought to you by TechSystems, an industry leader in full-stack technology services, talent services, and real-world application. For more information, go to teksystems.com. Before we get started, I wanted to let you know that my latest book, Priority is Action: 7 Principles for Better Strategies, Decisions, and Outcomes, is now available. In it, I give ideas and insights for leaders and teams that need to make meaningful progress on their priorities. After all, our priorities are what we do, not what we say we'd like to do. You can find Priority is Action on Amazon or learn more on my website, gregkihlstrom.com. Now let's get on to the show. There's no question that greater reliance on predictive analytics, enhanced automation, and the capabilities of generative AI are helping to shape the enterprise of tomorrow. Today, we're going to talk about building the self-optimizing enterprise and how data, collaboration, and workflow optimization work together to create an organization where human creativity and innovation work seamlessly with artificial intelligence. To help me discuss this topic, I'd like to welcome Don Schuerman, CTO and VP of Product Strategy and Marketing at Pega. Don, welcome to the show.
Great to be here, Greg. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, looking forward to talking about this with you. Why don't we get started with you giving a little background on yourself as well as your role at Pega?
Yeah, so I've been in the technology world now going on almost 30 years. Started working at the help desk in college, turned that into a support job at Pega, ended up in engineering, spent some time in the delivery mechanism in the field, and then kind of found my sweet spot as sort of the person with one foot in the technology and one foot in our go-to-market and our client side. So, as CTO, I often say that my job and my team's job is really to be chief translation officer. Make sure that we can explain really effectively what's happening in the technology world, what's happening in our tech, and how that translates to value for our clients. And then also make sure that we're really understanding at a pretty deep level what our clients need so that we can translate that back into the things that we can put in our products that are going to really deliver value for them.
Great. Well, yeah, let's dive in then. So I want to start here with a topic that certainly getting a lot of attention, generative AI. It seems like just about every interview I do here, we touch on it at least a little bit. But, I think Pega as an enterprise AI decisioning and workflow automation platform is definitely doing some really interesting things here that definitely want to discuss. So recently, Pega announced a new collaborative application called Gen AI Blueprint that focuses on some specific challenges that many enterprises face. Can you talk a little bit about Gen AI Blueprint does and what it is and how it can be used to streamline automation?
Sure. So, we've been helping pretty large enterprises tackle what are pretty sophisticated workflow challenges for decades. And one of the things that we've seen is oftentimes workflow transformation projects. And if you think about it, workflows are kind of at the core of every customer experience you deliver.
Yeah.
If you're a bank and you do customer service, that's a workflow. If you're an insurance company and you process claims, that's a workflow. If you're a health insurer and you have to onboard a new member and get them to understand their benefits, that's a workflow, right? So workflows are kind of at the core of how you deliver the most important experiences in your business. And transforming those, changing those, a lot of times when you're building out a project to do that, people spend a lot of time, thousands of hours, debating what the workflow needs to look like, looking at the current state. And it's very easy to both, one, spend a lot of time in kind of, we often call analysis paralysis.
Right.
But it's also, often that, especially if you get people who live day to day with the as is workflow, as one of the executives I work with once put it, if you spend all day on the cow path, it's naturally that your instinct is to repave it, right?
Yeah.
So what you end up with is repaving the cow path. So instead of getting a nice 4-lane highway to run your workflows on, you've kind of followed the old way of doing things. And we look at Gen AI Blueprint as a way to break through some of that. So what Gen AI Blueprint does is it combines some of the best practices for key industry workflows that we've developed by working with clients and partners over the last many years with Gen AI, so that I can go in and say, hey, I'm a bank and I'm looking to, in my credit and card servicing area, I want to improve the way that I handle credit card disputes.
Okay.
And Blueprint will automatically, based on our best practices and by combing through just the knowledge of the internet with Gen AI, come back and say, great, here are the top 6 or 7 workflows that you should consider. And you can edit those, change those, vary the description of them. We'll take those workflow names and descriptions, we'll feed them back into our best practices in Gen AI, and we'll come back with and say, great, for each of those workflows, here's what the best practice would look like in terms of the high-level stages it needs to flow through, the individual steps that need to happen, the data models you need to have associated with it, the participants you need to account for in the workflow. And so that I very quickly, like in a matter of minutes, get a starting point best practice definition of my workflow done.
Yeah.
And I can change it, suggest new ideas, but I want to minimize that tendency that you get when you get a bunch of people in a room staring at a blank whiteboard. I want to start with something that's already established as a best practice.
Yeah, and so to build on that, I mean, I think there's a lot of interesting things about this, but the collaborative aspect, as opposed to that blank slate or the debate, the analysis paralysis that you mentioned as well. I think Gen AI Blueprint approaches collaboration in a little bit differently. And can you talk a little bit about that collaborative aspect?
Yeah, and what I think here is interesting. There's what I would say is traditional collaboration, right? So Gen AI Blueprint is, by definition, a collaborative tool. You can invite other people to use it. It facilitates conversations and debates between team members. People can come in and suggest changes and make changes. But I also think there's a new type of collaboration that's kind of emerging, which is collaboration between humans and AI. Right? If you've played with GPT, or if you've got you've created in some of the latest versions of what OpenAI has done your own GPTs, you're basically in a collaborative conversation with an AI engine.
Yeah.
And so not only does Blueprint facilitate human to human collaboration, it also allows a human to collaborate with some of the knowledge that AI has, and hopefully push and challenge maybe some of the traditional thinkings that humans may have. We've always tried to do design thinking based approaches when we develop new workflow projects. And design thinking is great, but you have to bring a really skilled facilitator to the table.
Yeah.
Whereas now with AI, I think we can actually help people inject design thinking into what they're doing, regardless of who they're doing it with, which I think is pretty powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think builds on this idea of, instead of AI replacing humans, it's augmenting, and even, to your point, being part of the team. I know that may be a foreign concept to some people, but I think more and more, I mean, I've got a local copy of that I interact with, and stuff like that, just to, on a just to play around with it sometimes, and helpful in other ways. But one other aspect of this I wanted to talk through is on the data side. So I work consult with some pretty large organizations that are very particular about where their data goes and what applications have access to it. And obviously AI, whether it's generative, predictive, all of these require a lot of data, good data, and a lot of it is proprietary data. So this is certainly something I know Pega focuses on a lot, is just how to do this well at enterprise grade data capabilities. So can you talk a little bit about how do you maintain that focus? What are you thinking about as your, obviously you have to have the best data possible, but you also have to take those considerations of the enterprise in mind.
Yeah, I think it's really hard to talk about AI and data without breaking down the differences between some of the different AI technologies that are out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I often like to think about the distinction between what I think of as left brain AI, which is analytical, it's mathematical, it has a little bit of explainability to it. And we use left brained AI, predictive analytics, Bayesian models, some self learning adaptive models at pretty massive scale with pretty significant clients to do things like next best action. So figure out when you're talking to a customer, what's the best possible conversation to have with them? Is it offering them a new product? Is it, trying to take some action to retain them? Is it just getting them to a service case that they need to get resolved faster?
Yeah.
And that next best action, we're able to do that in a way that completely uses the client's data, but keeps it completely safe, separate. It's their own. There's no injection of that into some master model. That becomes a very proprietary model that only the client has access to. And the models are very explainable. They can explain why and how they made a certain decision. We call that transparency. That becomes very important. So
Yeah.
for those kinds of analytical AI models, we've built a lot of expertise with our clients on how to do that in a way that ensures that the data that they have and then the models that are built from that data stay private and protected to the client. And our clients want that not just to protect their data, but a lot of these models then become competitive advantage to them. And they don't want to be running the same model as somebody else. They very much want their own model.
Yeah. Yeah.
The right brain side of AI, generative AI, that is kind of creative and can, we've seen it. You play with Midjourney, it generates images and it can create text, and you can ask it to, write Bob Dylan lyrics that never existed before, right? That generative AI requires much more massive data sets, like billions or tens of billions of records to train.
Yeah.
And what we've been working with there is, one, making sure that we're not sending client data or PII data over to the model. So we've built tools into our Gen AI architecture that do things like strip out protected information so that it doesn't flow through into the model. But I also think that as we've played more with a Gen AI, we're learning that we don't. I think that the needs to fine tune or retrain a Gen AI model are actually few and far between. So we've been experimenting much more with techniques like what's called retrieval augmented generation, or RAG, where you are able to build a proprietary protected safe data set. So say I've got a knowledge library that is proprietary to me as a client, and I want to have AI answer questions, but I want to base it entirely on the content in that library. Well, I use a RAG-based approach where I put that content library into a vector database, so it's chunked up into little pieces. And then instead of training the AI model, I actually build my prompt to AI that includes the content from my proprietary data source that I wanted to use to answer the question. So I actually prompt the Gen AI model, the GPT model, by saying, here's a question I need you to answer. I want you to answer it solely based on this set of content that I found in my vector database. And if you don't find an answer there, say, I don't know. And what that allows me to do is it allows me to generate answers from AI that are explicitly tied to a proprietary knowledge base and traceable back to that knowledge base without having to make my knowledge base public or out having to push my knowledge or my proprietary data into the model. We've got a new product called Gen AI Knowledge Buddy that is basically the implementation of that with a bunch of controls to make it work at the enterprise scale. And I think that those kinds of approaches, as we play more with these Gen AI tools, I think are going to become much more prevalent as a way to use the power of some of these publicly available models from OpenAI and Azure and Google and AWS and others, but still protecting your proprietary enterprise data.
Yeah, because I would imagine the challenge with just some individual sitting out there using ChatGPT, like they want to generate stuff. They need to your point, mountains of data to source the content from. But an enterprise most likely already has the data. It's really a matter of accessing that, right? And so I would imagine what you're talking about also, it reduces things like hallucinations. It's going to, any product information or anything like that is going to be correct because there's no alternative. There's not someone else's product data sitting in there as well, right? So does it kind of protect against some of that some of those other maybe risks or things that enterprises are might be concerned about?
Yeah, there are three big challenges, right? When you ask Gen AI a question, one, it can make stuff up,
Yeah.
hallucinate. Two, it doesn't necessarily know where the answer came from. Like
Yeah.
it can't tell you how it knows it. It just kind of knows it. And three, it's traditionally limited to the date in which the model was trained, which,
Yeah.
might often be months or years ago, right?
Yeah.
So what this RAG approach lets you do it solves all those problems. One, I'm constraining the model to only answer based on the data and the content that I've provided. So it doesn't hallucinate.
Yeah.
I know what content I provided it to answer the question, so I have traceability to where it found the answer. And as long as I can keep my content library up to date, I'm feeding the model in real time the content that it needs. So I can always have the latest and up-to-date content and data flowing in, right? So these kinds of architectures, I actually think even with the size of data that they have, for many enterprises, there's no inherent competitive advantage in trying to build or train their own generative AI models. As opposed to their own analytical models, which I think they very much want to train, but their own generative models, I think in many cases, what they'll end up doing is using the latest innovations from OpenAI and Azure and others, but using techniques like RAG to ensure that they can constrain the model and source how the model behaves from their own proprietary data sets.
I hope you're enjoying the first part of the show, and I want to invite you to check out another podcast from the Agile brand. It's called B2B Agility, and it's hosted by me, Greg Kihlstrom. The B2B Agility podcast looks at the factors that drive success in B2B marketing, with a focus on the people, processes, data, and platforms that make B2B brands stand out and thrive in a competitive marketplace. You can find B2B Agility on this podcast platform or wherever you normally listen. Before we get back to the show, I just wanted to remind you to hit the follow or subscribe button on your app to make sure you get notified when new episodes of this show are available. Now let's get back to the show. Next topic I wanted to talk about here is maybe even a little bigger concept, though, really timely as enterprises are exploring more automation, more AI-enabled integration, predictive models, all of the stuff we've kind of touched on already. And concept is what Pega refers to as the autonomous enterprise. And wanted to spend some time talking about this as it's also, top of mind for myself as well as I'm sure others. So first, just to kind of level set here, I'd love to hear, what is your definition of the autonomous enterprise? And, is it a destination or a journey that an organization finds itself on?
Yeah, I think it's a journey,
Yeah.
and I think there are degrees and different places of autonomy that we can put into the business. I define an autonomous enterprise as an enterprise that is continuously optimizing itself in real time.
Yeah.
So whether that's how I engage with customers, so if I am learning in real time from every customer interaction that I have so that my next interaction is better, or if I am learning from every time I complete a workflow so that the next time I do that workflow, it's more efficient or more effective or gets the customer to what they want faster, right? If I'm driving that kind of continuous optimization in real time, that's where I start seeing that's the power and the benefit of autonomy in the business.
Yeah, yeah. And so probably have my own answer to this question, but you know, why is this so important as far as, why is it so challenging when there are predominantly human-driven decisions versus more data-driven decisions? In other words, what's kind of some of the needs for the autonomous enterprise to be more in use?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think there's always the need for human judgment and human empathy. I don't think
Yeah,
that goes away. But as the set of data that we have available to ourselves becomes bigger and bigger, humans can't make a million decisions in a second.
right.
Humans can't take in the full history of interactions that you have with a customer in a second. AI can, right? So if I can use the power of the AI models to help broaden the set of data and the scope that's available to me when I make a decision, my business can make better decisions, whether that's how I interact with a customer or what actions I take while trying to complete a workflow.
Yeah, yeah. So, kind of a middle step, you could say, in between, let's say, fully, only humans making decision with no real data to back it up, and that autonomous enterprise would be, a self-learning or AI guided decision making, where technology is providing insights, whether real time, some others to make decisions. Talking about the Fortune 500 space where we all kind of work in here. How far along would you say most organizations are in reaching this middle step, and what's maybe preventing more from getting there?
So I think there are organizations, right, that are getting there in pockets, right? So you talked to Tommy from Verizon,
Yeah,
right? I think in a lot of the ways that Verizon engages with their customers, they're using real time optimization in the form of what we call next best action and our customer decision hub product to figure out in real time what's the right conversation to have with the customer and learn from previous interactions to make that better automatically over time. So I think there are lots of these pockets where organizations are doing it. What I don't think it has become yet is a discipline that is consistent across the organization. And I
yeah,
think that's where there's real opportunity, and I think the emergence of Gen AI has kind of opened people's eyes to the way in which all forms of AI, analytical, generative, large language models, etc., can be deployed broadly across the enterprise to find those places where we can be continuously improving and smarter in every interaction, every step we take.
yeah, yeah. We kind of touched on this a little earlier, but I wanted to circle back to this idea of AI working alongside human teams. And do you think it's helpful for organizations to think of AI tools, models, applications as part of the team, or is that helpful or not, do you think, especially as a lot of organizations are growing in maturity?
So so it's interesting. I don't love anthropomorphizing AI
Yeah,
because it's not a thinking, feeling mechanism like humans are, right? ChatGPT can really feel like it understands us. But if I ask ChatGPT for a recipe for a burrito, it doesn't know what a burrito is.
Yeah.
It doesn't know what rice is. It just knows that when somebody asks for burrito, the next most likely word to stick in a recipe for burrito is X.
Yeah.
And that's what it does, right? So what I think is best is to think of AI as a tool. In the much way the same way that you would never hire a marketer or a business professional that couldn't use Excel
Right.
to do their job. I think in the future you wouldn't hire somebody who couldn't use generative AI to do their job more efficiently.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of like back in the day, searching on Google or a search engine, even predating, Google. I think there were people that were just not good at searching on search engines, right? So it's kind of a tool that obviously Gen AI is. I see it as kind of an extension of that way of you're still querying something, you're still asking for a response. Just the responses get more sophisticated. I mean, so in other words, it's kind of like a skill then almost that someone would need to come to the table regardless of their position. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think the there's been a lot of talk about sort of prompt engineers, right? And that's sort
Yeah.
of the new forefront of software engineering. But I think that idea of we all have to learn how to interact with this technology in a way that's going to be most effective.
Yeah. Yeah. So that ideal stage on the journey to an autonomous enterprise is, I know Peg has referred to it as the self-optimizing enterprise. You mentioned that as well, where technology is driving agility autonomously. People get to focus on what people do best, and creativity, innovation, all of those things as well. Can you talk a little bit? I know you've touched on this a little bit, but can you talk a little bit more maybe about what does that self-optimizing enterprise do differently than even that middle step we talked about? And what's the role of leaders in this type of environment?
Yeah, I think that part of this, right, is cultural as it is technological,
Yeah.
right? And so I think the role of leaders, one, is to be hungry for continuous improvement, right? And to be hungry for the kind of real time, ongoing, continuous improvement that this kind of autonomous technology allows. A business process that is literally from instance to instance getting smarter.
Yeah.
And I think bringing that kind of demand of how can we use the data, how can we use the technology to never sort of be satisfied with the quality of a customer interaction or the quality of efficiency of a piece of work, and always looking to then squeeze more efficiency or be a little bit more better, more relevant to a customer in a conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. And so along those lines, how do you look at measuring success here? I mean, certainly, there's maturity models that can be used and things like that, but from a KPI and a quantitative level, like how should businesses be thinking about tracking their progress towards becoming more of this autonomous enterprise?
Yeah, I mean, we've done some thinking about you. If you look at this at a workflow level, like a workflows tend to move from like a completely manual and unmanaged through managed and structured to automated to adding some degree of intelligence to being more and truly autonomous, right? And I think you can track every workflow through that.
Yeah.
Ultimately, at the end of the day, your metric should be tied to your customers and your business. Am I driving the most efficiency possible out of the business? And am I driving the experiences that my customers want? And is that reflected in my revenues and my customer satisfaction?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, Don, thank you so much for joining the show. One last question before we wrap up here. You've given a lot of great insights and advice already, but what is one next best action that you'd recommend for those listening out there that want to take a one step towards becoming an autonomous enterprise?
So I did like a straw poll on LinkedIn about a week ago because I was just curious about what degree of access organizations are giving employees to GPT and generative AI tools. And about 50% of the people who responded who weren't Pega employees basically have no access to this stuff. So I think the most important thing people can do is actually get your hands on it yourselves. Whether that's using, a secure tool that your enterprise provides, one of our secure tools, check out Blueprint, which you can go to on pega.com/blueprint. But I think that this technology is moving fast and changing. And the only way leaders can truly understand how to apply it to their business is if they bring some degree of firsthand knowledge and firsthand experience.
Yeah, I love that. Well, again, I'd like to thank Don Schuerman, CTO and VP of Product Strategy and Marketing at Pega, for joining the show. You can learn more about Don and Pega by following the links in the show notes. Also, don't forget to register for Pega World Inspire, June 9 through 11 at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas. I'll be there and look forward to some amazing sessions and announcements. Hope to see you there. Thanks again for listening to the Agile Brand, brought to you by Tech Systems. If you enjoyed the show, please take a minute to subscribe and leave us a rating so that others can find the show more easily. You can access more episodes of the show at www.gregkihlstrom.com. That's GregKihlstrom.com. While you're there, check out my series of best-selling Agile Brand guides covering a wide variety of marketing technology topics, or you can search for Greg Kihlstrom on Amazon. The Agile Brand is produced by Missing Link, a Latina-owned, strategy-driven, creatively fueled production co-op. From ideation to creation, they craft human connections through intelligent, engaging, and informative content. Until next time, stay agile.
Before Shopify, were you wondering, where are my sales at? Now you're selling with Shopify, the global commerce platform supercharging your selling. You have no problem selling online, in person, on social media, and beyond. Gary, easy on the cha-ching.
Oh, sorry, but my Shopify sales are through the roof.
Start selling with Shopify today and discover how millions of businesses around the world use Shopify to ignite their selling. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/listen. Shopify.com/listen.
Without the ones like you, who work tirelessly to keep things running, everything would suddenly stop. Hospitals, factories, schools, and power plants, they all depend on you. No matter the weather, emergency, or time of day, you're the ones who get it done. At Grainger, we're here for you with professional-grade industrial supplies. Count on real-time product availability and fast delivery. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Ever tried reading while jogging, cooking, or even juggling flaming torches? Yeah, it doesn't end well. But with audiobooks.com, you can conquer books without the circus act. Dive into over 450,000 titles, including more than 10,000 free ones. Get hooked on a bestseller, find your next obsession, or finally read that classic you've been avoiding since high school. And here's the inside scoop. Sign up today for a free 30-day trial and snag your first 3 audiobooks on the house. Sign up for your free trial at audiobooks.com/podcastfree today. That's audiobooks.com/podcastfree.